All right. All right. So just some introductions. We have on our call today, we have Dr. Arthur Jofrion. He is our leader of our division. He is the Deputy Assistant Superintendent of Educator Talent and Workforce Development. I am Rebecca Stevenson. I'm the project supervisor for LEADS. Then we have Miss Lori Penisson, who is our project lead and also the manager of our training, resources, and policy. And we also have Keisha Thomas, who on the project leads and manages the data platform and the data entry. We also have our partners with NIET on the call today. So we have Miss Nicole Boleyn, who is the project lead on her side for leads. We have Abby Barton, who is the project manager. And then we have Jill Crane, who is here for training and field support. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Lori to get us started with a quick icebreaker.
Hi, everybody. We're excited to have you here today as we dip into learning more about the LEADS process and components. But before we start, we do want to just kind of make ourselves smile and kind of break the ice here. So what's one event, incident, or comment that you heard at school that made you smile this school year? Something that made you smile. If you could drop it in the chat. These are the things we miss. And I get excited when we get to go into the school system and hear the little ones or hear about good things going on. So anxious to hear what everyone has to say. Some incentives are being offered and a teacher loves them. Oh, somebody had on tap shoes. That's so cute. A new dancer. Love it. Oh, picture day had to be canceled. Oh, you'd spent all that time getting ready, but it does make you laugh. Oh yeah, first year teachers. I love going to the new teacher experience because they just really are so exciting, excited to start the year and just all that fresh energy. Oh, spirit shirts. Yes, I missed those. I missed the spirit shirts too. Oh, a bow tie. I love it. Aw. This is so great. I'm so glad that we have things that make us smile to keep our days going, even when it can get rough or in the face of storms continuing to mess with our scheduling. So I'm excited to hear all these great things. All right, we'll
I
go
love
ahead.
that
Oh,
Laurie, I love that
yeah.
someone said that the student is excited for deer hunting season coming up. When
That's
I
true.
worked in when I worked in Rapides, we used to have the Squirrel Bowl, which was a football game to kick off squirrel season. So
Oh, that is so cool. Yeah, and that lets us know that fall is coming. And so we'll have some nicer weather and hopefully be past all the storm season. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So to make the most of our meeting, we do ask that everyone participate. So there'll be some opportunity to come off of mute, jump in the chat with you, which you've already started. So we're excited and join our conversations. We do ask that you be visible if you can. We do understand that there may be times when you can't, but when you can, please put cameras on and just collaborate because that's really going to be the most powerful part of these calls is when we get into our breakout rooms and share and learn from one another. All right, so our objectives for today, I'm sure you know because you were looking when you chose which call you wanted to come on, but we are going to start with our purpose, our why. It's really important that we understand what our why is as we transition to the leads process, and we want to generate some ideas for communicating it with our stakeholders. But then we're going to get into that meat that you're here for, identifying critical attributes of a school's observation schedule, and then we'll kind of reflect on what our current observation schedules look like and determine strengths of our current schedules and maybe areas that we want to improve upon. And so here's our agenda. We're going to start with some updates and reminders. We want to keep you informed, and then we'll get into that why and the schedule and the next steps. All right, so updates and reminders. We're always going to preview the current call we're on and then provide you a list of the upcoming calls. And so as Rebecca said earlier, we are making up our earlier September scheduled calls. And so we unfortunately do have 2 on the same day. We won't do that to you all the time, but we have this 9 o'clock. And then if you have the opportunity to join us at 11:30, we'll be going into the beginning of year conference and goal setting process for leaders. All right, so we do want to point out our leads library. We are going to put that in the chat for you as well. This leads library has lots of great resources. It has this evaluation frequently asked questions list. It really provides lots of answers to questions that we have seen. We continue to add questions as we get new ones. And so that is a very helpful resource. We also want to point out the learning year guidance. This is great for system and school leaders. It really shows you a year at a glance some of the things that you may want to begin activating as we do this transition. And then we have some handbooks there for evaluators, and we also have a teacher handbook as well. And then one new feature we have, we did not have this for Compass, but now we have some guidance on how to use the rubric with teachers that might not teach in a traditional setting. And so they might be at an alternative site, or they might be the librarian. And so we have some guidance on how to use this tool with them. And then also want to point out that SLT reflection tool. We are, if you are transitioning to leads, which likely you are since you're on this call, we are going to have a 5-point scale for SLTs. And so this SLT reflection tool shows you those 5 levels that you'll see when you get into the data system. We also want to point out, and we'll put this in the chat and we'll share it again at the end, Leads Teacher Newsletter has been kicked off in August, and we'll soon be delivering you our September version. And this is a great place for you to learn more about leads. It really is geared for teachers, but it's a great resource for anyone. Last month, we pointed out the teacher handbook, and we're digging deeper. This month, you're going to see it really hone in on that reflection piece, which is a new part of our evaluation. And so you'll get lots of little tips and tricks and resources there. And so we really do recommend you join that newsletter. All right, I'm very excited to talk about this one, our on-site implementation support sessions. We kicked these off last week. We were in Monroe City Schools and St. Landry, and these sessions were phenomenal. We go in, do an observation, we talk about the lesson plan, and we gather evidence during the observation, categorize the evidence, calibrate, really looking at student work, which was so powerful. And so I'm excited for these sessions. We do have some open slots next week. So I recommend that you, if you can attend next week, that you join in West Feliciana or St. Charles. And then we also have sessions open in October for the 1st through the 3rd, and we will also be having some at the end of October. So I definitely recommend these, as it was so powerful last week. And I think this really will deepen that understanding and really talk about how that student work really guides you in using that evidence. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Keisha to talk about our data system, which we're excited about.
Good morning. Yes, the LES, known as Louisiana Evaluation System, as many of you already know, is replacing the Compass Information System, which was known as CIS. all 2024-2025 evaluation data will be entered directly into LES. Data will be entered throughout the school year, as there will be no spreadsheet uploads by both the evaluatee and the evaluator. LES launch has been on a phased rollout, and the LES contact, so your LES system contact received information on adjusting the phased rollout if needed because of Hurricane Francine, which was now, about a week ago. But the LES system contacts had that information regarding the adjustments if needed. The LES launch phased rollout allows for users to be able to assist other users in the next phase, sort of on like a tiered type approach. So when we talk about a tiered type approach with this rollout, we're meaning, for example, your LES system contacts got started in everything within the rollout plan and then moved over information to system and school leaders, and then followed by that moving on into the remaining educators in your system. Since users will access EdLink security for LES, it is encouraged to make sure users have MILA credentials. And as I mentioned, you may want to reach out to your LES system contacts, as I have been speaking and supporting many of them as within this rollout plan, as they are receiving the additional information regarding LES launch and support in regards to that. So we're quite excited because it is live, and the systems are working through getting the evaluators assigned and into LES.
Thanks, Keisha. All right, I'm now going to turn it over to Rebecca as we get into examining our why.
So as we launch the LEADS evaluation, we want to spend a little time thinking through and examining our why. What is the purpose of our enhanced evaluation system? And in order to do that, we wanted to ground ourselves in the LDOE educational priorities. And as we think about these priorities, we know that a reimagined evaluation system focuses on supporting and growing educators and leaders. And we know that this is going to directly impact the success of the priorities. The direct impact on ensuring that all students have an effective teacher will also indirectly impact the other priorities. So it's important that we have a common and shared vision for evaluation. So we wanted to talk with you all today to ensure that we have that shared vision. I want you to take about 1 minute to individually respond to these 2 questions in your participant guide. So what is the purpose of LEADS, and how can the processes embedded in LEADS impact students? So take 1 minute to individually reflect in your participant guide, and I see Abby has posted that in the chat. So now we want to hear from you. If you could put in the chat box and label it. If you're answering the question to the first one, put a number 1. If you're answering the question to the second one, just put a number 2 in front of it. We want to hear from you for these 2 questions. So take a second and put these in the chat box. Yes, grow teachers to grow students. Yeah, I see another one. Our teachers and students, the purpose of our reimagined evaluation system leads. Yes, I see some for number 2. How can the process embedded in leads impact students? I see some answers, stronger teachers lead to better outcomes for the students, and the coaching cycle. The coaching cycle, we're hearing a lot is, that process, that newer process, some were doing it, but now we have it built into policy, into the system, that this is really, and I think that's exactly what I was going to say, Karen, to provide for that differentiation. And it helps provide that differentiation for our teachers to be able to impact our students. Great. Yeah, so just to kind of summarize everything I'm seeing, the purpose of leads is to focus on that educator and leader support and professional growth. Also that mindset shift. So to begin to positively impact educator perceptions. And then number 2, think about the impact. So by providing and improving instruction, we should have that positive impact on students. A lot of you stated that in the chat. And the student focus of the rubric really, really does help that happen. So thank you for sharing. Okay. Now let's think about the communication of this why. So we as leaders know the purpose and have the vision for leads, but it's also important to ensure that this communication is communicated to all stakeholders. I want you to take a moment to think about ways that we have voiced this purpose for our educators. Educators need to hear about the training that evaluators have received and the full cycle of coaching now embedded in the evaluation. They need to know that the rubric is a growth model and the process has added support for teachers. They also need to know about the additional opportunities for reflection that are built into the system. They need to know about the rubric focus on student ownership. Positive communication will be the key to a really smooth transition. Okay. So aligning for success, as we get into this next piece and really dig into our observation schedule, I want you to think through, so what does your school observations schedule imply about your why? Okay, and now I'm going to hand it over to Nicole.
Thank you, Rebecca. So next we're going to dig into the school schedule to determine the critical components of an effective evaluation schedule that aligns to the purpose of leads and sets the stage for success. So first, let's define what we mean by an observation schedule. This is a strategic schedule for observations that accounts for all components of the observation process. The school observation schedule for evaluation may need to look a little different than it has in previous years as policy has changed. The schedule should account for multiple observations and may even include multiple observers for each teacher, sequencing the schedule to account for 3 observation windows or cycles and some other critical attributes. Now, take 1 minute to individually brainstorm and just jot down your thoughts regarding the components of an observation schedule that are critical to implementation of an efficient and high-quality observation process. You have space in your participant guide to capture your thoughts on page 2. I'll give you a minute now. And go ahead and place one of your ideas, one of your critical components into the chat box. We'd like to see what you're thinking. Oh, excellent point from Allison Lowe. Yes, the schedule needs to be paced in such a way that it allows for those opportunities for teacher growth between observations. Excellent point. So we need time between the observation windows in each teacher's observation where they can engage in that follow-up coaching and support cycle. Excellent. Melissa notes formative walkthroughs scheduled, or some might call those learning walks. But yes, where you can actually go in and take a pulse check in between observation cycles. So you might want to consider those being included on your schedule, your observation schedule. And Tamala points out to spread things out in an evenly manner that allows time for each part of the process. And so you have time to give quality feedback. Really appreciate that, Tamala, because you do want to do that. You want to carve out time and identify or label in your cycle the pre-conference for those announced observations and the post-conference. Like, we need to include that in the observation schedule. Every observation, whether it's announced or unannounced, should have that post-conference following it, and then that coaching cycle that follows the post-conference. They're all important to teacher growth and student success. It needs to be intentional and focused. Do not be distracted. Absolutely. That's the reason why we create this schedule. Thank you, Tawana. It's important that we have this schedule. It's been intentionally and strategically prepared to keep our observers focused on what needs to be done and when it needs to be done, so that we provide teachers the support that they deserve and the time for that support that they deserve. And yes, I want to note one more in the chat box. Thank you guys for putting these comments in there and ideas. We have someone from NOMMA saying planning ahead for observations for new teachers, less than 2 years, who we know will need 3 observations. So yes, you're going to need to plot out this observation schedule where you already have those teachers that need 3 observations. You have them in the schedule in each of your 3 cycles throughout the school year. And then you've got your teachers with 3 or more years experience. You've got them in that observation schedule in that first cycle, right? And you have all teachers accounted for with those years experience in that schedule. So it's important to be that specific and strategic. And yes, you do need to keep that schedule. Let's hold close to it. Let's follow the schedule once it is created. Okay, excellent ideas. Thank you all for that. Now we're going to move to the next slide, and we've got here for you several critical attributes that we've identified that are part of the observation schedule. You do have space in your participant guide on page 2 where you can write in this collective list of attributes. So you'll note here several things, and what we've noted at NIET over many years using an observation schedule for a school. The strongest school observation processes, they include at least these things. So what we have on the screen, 3 observation cycles or windows for observations, right? Because you're going to have teachers that need 3 observations. Those would be your new teachers with 0 to 3 years experience, and then, or 0 to 2, excuse me. And then you should identify observers. Go ahead and assign observations to those observers on your campus. Label the observations as announced or unannounced. There should be a defined window of time for conducting pre-conferences for those announced observations only. There should be a defined window of time for entering observation ratings into LESS. We don't want to forget about that piece. That's important that we follow the observation by entering the data into LESS. There should also be a defined window of time for conducting the post-conference. And remember, all observations, whether announced or unannounced, are followed by a post-conference. And there should be a defined window of time for conducting the follow-up support coaching plan and 1 informal observation within that coaching and support cycle that is driven by the coaching plan. And you'll note there at the bottom of the screen, paired observations. They are optional, but they are highly encouraged. And we have found at NIET over years of experience that the strongest school observation processes do include at least 1 cycle of paired observations. Paired observations do allow time for observers to continue to build their reliability with one another and to build that common language and that common understanding of the rubric, and to continue to build that with teachers as well. So we're about to take a little time to observe a couple of sample observation schedules. Please keep in mind when you do this that these are only examples. It's a school's choice in terms of how the schedule is formatted, whether it's in Word, it's a Google Doc, an Excel, or a Google Sheet, and also how a school monitors and tracks that observation schedule. However, no matter what your observation schedule looks like or what format you're using to create it, the critical attributes should be evident in the school's observation schedule. And remember that the schedule assists in ensuring that all aspects of the evaluation process do take place to assist with the fidelity of the process that's needed in order to truly impact instruction and to further impact student learning. So if you would turn to page 3 in your participant guide.
Nicole, I just want to point out one thing too with these samples. We wanted to kind of give you a variety with these 2 samples, and you will note that on one of the 2, we do have multiple observers there. We really just wanted you to see how you could label these for different types of observers, what types of observers you may use. But we do understand that it's possible that you will not have this many observers. But this kind of gives you an idea of how to make a schedule and some of the coding that you might want to use, and then also who could assist in doing those observations.
Thanks for that further clarification, Lori. So take the next 3 minutes to review the sample observation schedules, and as you review them, consider these following questions. What critical attributes that we just talked about on the previous slide are reflected in these observation schedules? And why might it be important to include these critical attributes? So go ahead and take 3 minutes. And Abby has dropped the participant guide into the chat box again in case you haven't clicked that open yet.
Abby, I do see a request for the participant guide again.
Okay, so now that you've had a little bit of time to review those two schedules, we'd like for you to respond in the chat box. We'd like to hear a little bit from you in terms of those two questions. So what critical attributes are reflected in the schedule? I see that we already have one response. Somebody noted 3 observation windows were identified. Any other thoughts? Go ahead and put it in the chat box, or feel free to come off of mute if you want to share a critical attribute that you noted was reflected in one of the observation schedules, or both. Excellent. Now some thoughts are coming through. Names of observers and types of observers. So we saw sometimes principal, assistant principal. In some situations, one of the schedules, we have master teacher, master 1, master 2. Christy notes specific coaching dates with an informal observation in between coaching dates. And that's to be able to have those meaningful conversations to determine growth. Excellent. Years of experience. Thanks for noting that, Tiffany. And observers are assigned again. Dates for entering data, the observation data into LESS. Thank you, Melissa. And also noted that the coaching plan was identified, that cycle, that window. Ashley noted announced and unannounced, so those were distinguished for teachers. These are great. Thank you so much. And then Lisa, to cap this out, she shares that this schedule includes all of the components of the observations. Important information was all in one place. Yes, and that is so important. That's what keeps this observation process on track and keeps it efficient and effective and keeps our purpose in mind to grow teachers in order to grow students. And then I think we are ready to move on. Thank you, Lori. So we're going to allow you some time now to go into breakout rooms. So when you get into breakout rooms, we want you to be able to share some ideas. You know, what currently observation schedule look and sound like, or do you need to put one in place? And what are your thoughts about proceeding with that? 1 minute to introduce yourselves. So if you haven't yet changed your name in your Zoom window, if you would go ahead and make sure to do that, that you have your first name, last name, and then your school system behind that, that would be really helpful. So 1 minute for introductions, and then we want you to answer the following questions. And those questions are, do you currently utilize an observation schedule? If so, talk about the strengths of your current observation schedule based on what we've introduced to you today as being those critical pieces or components. If so, what changes to the current observation schedule would strengthen it? So are there any ways in which you've noted today that you might be able to improve or enhance that schedule? If you do not currently utilize an observation schedule, what are the next steps to create one? What's going to be important to include in that schedule? And who in your school system or in your school will need to be included in the development of the observation schedule? So these are the questions that we want you to consider when you get into breakout rooms. And I believe Abby is going to send us all to breakout rooms. We'll be in there for about 6 minutes, and then I'll see you back when we return. Welcome back, everybody. So thank you for jumping into those breakout rooms and for sharing your experiences, and also talking about your next steps. You're already thinking about what you might need to do to improve or enhance an observation schedule or to create one perhaps. And you're also identifying ways in which your current observation schedule has those critical components to ensure success, right? And effective implementation of leads and supportive teachers. So thank you for engaging in the breakout rooms. And I'm going to turn it over to Jill now, who is going to walk you through some next steps.
Good morning, everyone. So we are now going to move into wrapping up our call today, but we wanted to make sure you had some time to reflect on today's learning and think about any next steps for yourself to implement this new learning. So we want you to take time to think about observation scheduling as you've been digging into today and the current status of this practice in your school or your school system. So for system leads today, we want you to think about the schedules that are in place at your schools participating in the leads transition. Take 2 minutes to individually respond to the reflection questions here, which are also in your participant guide on pages 3 and 4. And think about jotting some of your own thoughts. Okay, so as you're coming to a close about the the thinking that you've engaged in today and some thoughts around these guiding questions here where you jotted some of your reflections about how you're going to communicate to stakeholders, the purpose of the enhanced evaluation system. And then also thinking about what you learned today and discussed in your breakout rooms about what's working well and supports the purpose of supporting and growing educators to grow students. And then you were also reflecting on what might need to be revisited in order to adjust or better align that purpose in supporting and growing educators. A couple of things that I'm noticing in the chat box, and if anyone feels led to unmute and share out, we would love to hear from you today. But what I'm noticing in the chat box from Andy, in response to his, reflections on this learning today, staff support, which will provide better outcomes for students. Absolutely. That's what we're in this work for, in this in this career of ours. We got into this because we wanted to support student learning. Absolutely. I'm also seeing from Dean reassuring staff that as we transition into this new system, we need to keep in mind that we are focused on growth. That is so true, Dean. Keeping it as leaders in the forefront, that this process is about growth. And helping our teachers and our buildings and in our systems be comfortable with it and recognize it as a growth opportunity. So I think I'm going to kick it back over to Rebecca. We absolutely enjoyed seeing a couple of your reflections in the chat box. And so now we're kind of set up to thinking about your own reflections that you have and how you're going to move forward to strengthen this process. Miss Rebecca?
All right, thanks, Jill. So now as we think through how we're going to connect today's learning, so as we close out, let's look at our next steps. We challenge each of you to meet with your system or school leadership teams to identify the next step for positive communication about leads transition and to revisit your schedules. I did hear that a lot in my breakout room about adding, like, we had something, but now we've learned something new to add. So that is a really good next step for everyone. Okay.
Miss Rebecca, I do have one other possible next step. I did see in the chat someone really enjoyed the breakout room and talking with others and asked about numbers. We don't have a list with numbers, but I will ask you what would be helpful is if you would, behind your name, add your system, because that way people can find your contact information much more easily. And so we do ask that on all of our monthly calls, behind your name, if you just add your system, and that just kind of helps for us as we get to know each other, and it makes it a little easier to reach out and find contact information, because it is, the collaboration really is going to be what pushes us forward in our understanding as we learn from each other.
Yeah, feel free to do that if you haven't done it yet, to do it in to message each other or throw your email in the chat to find the people from your group, because I saw that some of you want to connect with the people in your breakout rooms. And that is a really good deal so that we can support each other. I do want to plug one more time the on-site support visits, because I saw so many of you that attended in the chat spoke about how impactful that was. So if you haven't already, if someone can throw the link in there one more time to sign up, that is also another really good next step for, for yourself, for anyone that may need a little bit more guidance. We've heard, I'll be at the ones in Westville this week. And so I'm really excited to see and hear what everyone who attended last week did. Okay. And again, we can go to the next slide. Many resources are available in our Leads library. We are transitioning to a new website. It will be organized pretty soon, but we can't organize it until LDOE transitions to their new website. But everything that we've been doing and publishing is there. including handbooks, process forms, guides. There's a frequently asked question list that gets updated often. Educators are also encouraged to sign up for the LEADS newsletter. And as Lori had said in the beginning, although this is geared towards teachers, anyone can sign up and gain information from this because it is helpful for everyone. So you can scan that QR code if you wanted to sign up. Please send the link to if you have any sort of newsletters that go out, to encourage everyone to sign up to get this newsletter. Because the newsletter is produced by those of you that we introduced at the beginning on our team. So thank you for joining us today. I know we had a really large group for a Monday, and thank you for being such a pioneer as we transition to really redefine and reimagine evaluation in Louisiana. Louisiana is leading the way in providing support for educators, which we know will positively impact our students.
I do just also want to point out, we did record today's session, and we will be publishing it in the LEADS library. And we'll also be publishing these sample observation schedules as well. But you do have current links to them with your participant guide. Feel free to share them. And as said, we will also be adding them to the LEADS library. Thank you so much.